President Barack Obama's plan to reduce American combat forces in Afghanistan failed after the large city of Kunduz was overrun in September 2015. This was the first Afghan city to fall to insurgents since the war began in 2001. This embarrassment was magnified after a C-130 transport aircraft crashed while taking off from Jalalabad that claimed the lives of 6 American airmen and 5 contractors. The Taliban claimed credit, but the Americans were unsure why it crashed. The American CIA's aerial assassination program was failing to suppress the insurgency, and senior American officials were angry. Someone wanted revenge and ordered an aerial attack on a hospital in Kunduz where Taliban fighters were being treated, killing 24 patients and 18 medical staff, leaving 33 persons missing and over 30 wounded.
The evidence was undeniable. The hospital run by Doctors Without Borders in Kunduz was in flames, devastated by a U.S. airstrike, killing at least 24 hospital staff and patients. The airstrike was carried out by an AC-130 gunship. NBC News has learned that cockpit recordings revealed that the crew actually questioned whether the airstrike was legal. And a defense official said today it may in fact amount to a war crime. For 3 days, the U.S. military failed to acknowledge innocent civilians were killed.
An airstrike was then called to eliminate the Taliban threat, and several civilians were accidentally struck.
Finally, 4 full days after the strike, the U.S. commander for Afghanistan, General John Campbell, admitted the worst.
A hospital was mistakenly struck. We would never intentionally target a protected medical facility.
But a preliminary investigation indicates the U.S. military forces apparently failed to follow strict rules of engagement in identifying the target. Defense officials also acknowledged Doctors Without Borders called the Pentagon in the middle of the airstrike to report the hospital was under attack. But it's not clear that message ever reached the forces in Afghanistan. Military and defense officials are closely examining those cockpit recordings. And according to one official, if the crew knew the target was a hospital filled with civilians and launched the attack anyway, that's a war crime. Lester.
The Kunduz Trauma Center was run by the Geneva-based Médecins Sans Frontières charity, known in English as Doctors Without Borders, which remained open throughout the battle for the city. In 2014, more than 22,000 patients had been treated at this emergency trauma center, and more than 5,900 surgeries were performed. It was one of the few buildings in Kunduz with a generator and was brightly lit the night of the attack with 2 large hospital flags on the roof. Doctors had called and emailed their American and Afghan military contacts to report their exact GPS location to deter accidental attacks. They confirmed that Taliban fighters were being treated, but stated no arms were allowed in the hospital compound. 2 days before this devastating aerial attack, an advisor to General Joseph Dunford, the highest-ranking U.S. military officer in the Pentagon, emailed the hospital to ask if Taliban militants were, quote, holed up in the hospital. Hospital staff replied they had 105 patients, including 20 wounded Taliban and 4 wounded Afghan soldiers, and said they were all unarmed. The CIA obtained a list and confirmed that 2 patients were senior Taliban leaders on their kill list. An unknown senior official wanted revenge and ordered an American Special Operations AC-130 to destroy the hospital. This aircraft is equipped with a 105mm howitzer and a 40mm rapid-fire cannon that fired while circling the hospital for 30 minutes. It fired 211 shells, killing 42 patients and staff who had trusted the hospital's neutral and protected status. American generals in Afghanistan were unaware of this blatant war crime and denied it occurred. After evidence was broadcast by the media, generals claimed it was confusion during a battle. Few Americans understand the purpose of the U.S. Special Operations Command. It was created in the 1980s because the CIA had proven inept at covert military operations, but didn't like to request help from generals and admirals in the Pentagon, who often objected to breaking American and international law. The U.S. Special Operations Command was created to provide a military arm for the CIA and the President's National Security Council to conduct secret military actions outside the military chain of command. They operate worldwide without informing the Pentagon, regional commanders, or ambassadors, who might object to assassinations, massive bribery, gun running, drug running, kidnapping, torture, or destroying hospitals. The destruction of the Kunduz Trauma Center was a blatant war crime and difficult to explain as an accident. Demands for an independent investigation were ignored. The official military report blamed low-ranking unnamed airmen, but the gun camera footage of the attack was never released. The hospital was marked on military maps as off-limit to attacks, but the official report claimed the AC-130 crew was never informed, even though it was their third attack mission over Kunduz the past week. Generals referred to the attack as an airstrike to imply a fast-flying jet dropped bombs, but this was a careful 30-minute aerial bombardment. The AC-130 slowly circled as it had plenty of time to carefully examine the target before opening direct fire. Its navigation systems and night vision sights are first class. They could see there was no fighting around the hospital since muzzle flashes are easy to see at night. The military's official report states that the AC-130 showed up over Kunduz and its GPS system failed. That is not a problem because the U.S. military requires that close air support be coordinated by a highly trained man on the ground who can see the target, known as a JTAC. He marks the target and his position to prevent friendly fire casualties that also serves as a navigation beacon for the attack aircraft. This can be done with smoke, but at night he would use an infrared or other light. The report claims Afghan forces were conducting a night attack on a large building and urgently needed close air support. For unexplained reasons, the JTAC failed to perform his role. The AC-130 showed up overhead, and the report claims its GPS failed, and no JTAC was on site to mark his location and the target. In this case, the AC-130 would never open fire, especially in a city, and especially since it could see no fighting taking place. The crew would only destroy the hospital if ordered to attack that specific target. This was illegal, but keep in mind that these air crews slaughter Afghans daily and often blast buildings with little concern about civilian casualties. The hospital was easy to find since it had electrical generators providing light for the compound and was the only lit area in Kunduz. The American soldiers in Kunduz would have certainly mentioned that to the aircrew. Once the firing began, the hospital staff called American commanders to say they were under attack, yet the AC-130 fired away until it ran out of ammo. The nearby JTAC could see the AC-130 circling and firing away at the hospital 400 meters off target, but did not order it to stop because the hospital was the target, whose GPS coordinates had been provided to the Americans 2 days prior. The key evidence of this crime is that every AC-130 mission is recorded. There is a video and audio record. Here is one from Afghanistan that is linked below. If you watch this video, note the crew comments. If ordered to destroy a hospital, there must have been crew chat about the illegal order and if generals would blame them. The recordings have not been released publicly, nor shown to members of Congress who received a classified briefing. The crew was blamed by generals, but never named, and we are told they were transferred and somehow punished. The commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan, General John Campbell, took responsibility. He held a press conference to lie by saying it was a result of a series of human errors. Campbell was lucky that no reporter asked embarrassing questions about the absent JTAC or demanded to see the recording of the attack, because as Glenn Greenwald wrote in the article linked below, American corporate media helped cover up this atrocity with fake news. This was a successful mission as wounded Taliban insurgents at the hospital were killed and Doctors Without Borders pulled out of Kunduz, saying the attack was deliberate and its staff remained at risk. The U.S. military paid $6,000 to families of those killed, and the pointless war continued.